You ready?
Ready.
All right, here we go. Paradox of Sports, episode 39. You'll notice a cosmetic change tonight at the request of Jack. I have removed the sunglasses. I don't believe we'll make a habit of this. There were two reasons Jack asked me to, and frankly, I'm not sure where my sunglasses are. So they will return as soon as I find them. But Jack, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Oh, we're doing okay. What's the week been like down there?
Baseball practice.
Baseball practice, which falls into what we're doing tonight. We have a little baseball conversation. AT&T Sports, a face and a voice you will recognize when we get to it. We're not going to mess around much. Following the interview, I'm going to talk to Jack a little bit about he was out and about. He watched a little quarter midget racing at the state fairgrounds this weekend. So I want to talk to him about that and catch up a little bit on what has been going on in the wrestling world as we approach the 1-year anniversary of doing this. We are getting close to WrestleMania, are we not?
Yes, we are.
So they're kind of setting up the matchups and getting everything ready to go WrestleMania wise, or has all that been set? Okay, so we'll get into that after the interview. Before we do, we'll talk a little baseball. The Rockies, with them releasing Arenado, or not releasing Arenado, paying the Cardinals like $1 billion to take him. Does that piss you off, or where are you at in the fandom of kind of what they're doing?
I didn't really like that trade.
Why?
Because we barely got anything out of it.
So you think from the managerial side of things, something could have been done better there?
Mm-hmm.
As a young Rockies fan, is there, like, does it bother you that the Rockies suck year in and year out, or is it something where you're just going to follow the baseball regardless of how they do because they're your team, or do you wish there was some things being done to put a better product on the field?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We could have traded to the Cubs for Chris Bryant.
So you think they'd have got better if they'd have made the Chris Bryant deal? What else? Hypothetically, if you're the general manager, if you're Bydrich, what would you like to see him do?
I would like to see him at least get a good player out of a trade. Like we could have traded with the Cardinals, say Paul DeJong or Harrison Bader or somebody like that. Like a pretty good Cardinals player, and then add a bit of money on the way. Probably like a prospect or two.
So just done something different than giving away arguably the best third baseman to ever play in the history of baseball.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, we will dive into a little more baseball now. The interview, this was another one during the day as the COVID world kind of, hold on. Excuse me. As stuff kind of rolls on through the COVID world, this was another interview that you and the executive producer did during the day. So we have a sponsor that come on for this episode. So we'll pay a bill here, and then we will get on. Who do we got coming up in the interview?
All right. Introducing Rockies play-by-play announcer, the guy behind one of your favorite home run calls that I'm going to say in the interview. Please welcome Drew Goodman.
Need a quality pre-owned car, truck, van, or SUV? Go big to Big Daddy's Auto. Stop by or shop online. Don't see what you want? No biggie. We'll help you find it. The vehicle you need at a monthly price you'll love. We'll set you up big time. Find your ride at Big Daddy's Auto.
For having me. I appreciate it.
All right, Jack.
What got you into sportscasting?
The way I answered that is that I was an athlete growing up. I played football and baseball into college, and I always had a great fascination and interest with broadcasting sports and being involved in sports on television. And I figured that when my playing days were done, I would try to embark on that. And I was a communications major in college, and after college, tried got my first job and began climbing the ladder from there.
You talk about your experience at Ithaca College. What was your major?
I was a communications major with an emphasis on television and radio.
You started your career at Prime Sports Rocky Mountain. Were there any other companies you were eyeing?
Well, actually, I began my career, and you've done nice homework on me. I actually began my career at a small station that's now defunct in Aspen, Colorado, KSPN TV. There also is a radio station up there with the same call letters. And I was up there about 19 months and did sports on the news and did some high school games up there. And so it was a great place to start, obviously a beautiful town to start in. And that actually was my first job. And in terms of working for other companies beyond that, I've always been based with the various incarnations of the regional in Denver, which was Prime Sports and then became Fox Sports and Root Sports. And now, as people know it, it's AT&T Sportsnet Rocky Mountain. I've worked at ESPN. I've worked at NBC Sports and cups of coffee at other entities as well. I still do some stuff for the Pac-12 network, for instance. So a number of different places, but as I like to say, my bread's always been buttered by the regional sport, the regional here in the Denver area in this part of the country.
What do you think was the first major sports event you covered?
Probably doing Colorado State football and basketball in the late 80s for Prime Sports, and then doing the Denver Nuggets with Prime Sports and eventually doing their play-by-play. And around the same time, I was hired by NBC to do NFL games with the network. So those would be the first, the first go-round, if you will, of doing quote-unquote major sports.
Talk about your start with the Denver Nuggets.
Well, Al Albert was doing the games, and Al was one of three brothers. Probably the most famous brother is Marv, who's still working, doing games in the NBA, and his brother Steve and Al. They're terrific guys and terrific broadcasters. And Al was doing the Nuggets, and then he kind of slowly took a step back, and I was filling in for him. And then when he finally moved on to some other ventures, I was asked to take over, and that was 1994 when I started doing the Nuggets full time. And I did them between 94 and 04, and I started with the Rockies in 02, so they overlapped for 3 seasons.
How are you able to juggle that schedule? I know obviously there's some different time frames with games, but there's certainly that overlap where every single major sporting event's going on, bouncing back and forth between baseball and basketball. How challenging was that?
Yeah, well, originally when I was doing the Nuggets and then the Avalanche came along, I was hosting their pre and post game coverage and between period coverage when I wasn't working the Nuggets or on the road with the Nuggets. And then when the Rockies started, when they asked me to do the Rockies as well, I kind of took a step back from the Avalanche. And when there was overlap, which I think is what you're alluding to, which was typically April, and the Nuggets weren't great then. They only went to the playoffs. I think in my last year, they went to the playoffs again. I think that was my first year and my last year. There were some lean years, as I'm sure you're aware. But so now you're talking about into the first part of May, and both clubs were kind enough to have an agreement, whichever game was more important is the game that I would work. And there were a few occasions where I did a Sunday afternoon game at Coors Field and ran over to the Pepsi Center at the time, Ball Arena now, and did a Nuggets game that night. So that was a busy day. And there were some other times where depending on how important the game was, I would do the Nugget game and somebody would fill in for me on the Rockies game or vice versa.
In 2000, you joined the Broncos, where you covered the preseason games. Describe your 3 years there.
I'm glad. You know what? I forgot about that. You really have done your homework. Dave Logan, who's a good friend at the time, was in the preseason because Dave's been the longtime radio voice of the Broncos. He kind of took over that role from Larry Zimmer, and he would do the games on television in the preseason that were not nationally broadcast, and that was usually either 3 out of the 4 or 4 out of the 4 preseason games. And so when he would slide over and do television, they hired me to come in and do the radio games for the Broncos. Now, that's always fun. It's preseason football, but as we all know in these parts, the Broncos are king, and they, so many, everybody, stops whatever they're doing to pay attention to the Broncos, even if it's a preseason game. So it was a lot of fun to be, a very small part of that in the preseason and build up to the regular season and discuss players that were kind of making a name for themselves or potentially emerging. So I really enjoyed that. And I've had the opportunity, down the road, I was doing national games for ESPN radio and to, get to the, from a broadcast essence standpoint and calling games on radio is different than calling them on television, because you can see, you don't have to create the picture for people on television. And, 95% of what I do at least is on television. So to be able to go and call games, whether it was for the Broncos back in the day on the Broncos radio network or more recently for ESPN nationally, a nice challenge and a lot of fun and kind of a nice change of pace to do that.
And then to kind of piggyback off of Jack, we mentioned 2000. We actually crossed paths back then because I was an intern for 850 KOA that summer.
Okay.
2000. So, many days up in Greeley covering Bronco training camp. Obviously, weren't the best team then, but the big story during training camp was when Trevor Price was holding out. And I remember Coach Shanahan said something about, okay, I'm going to bring this up one time and one time only. Here's the update on the Trevor situation.
Yeah.
Well, being a dumb intern, I caught some rumblings around from the veteran, reporters and, writers. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to have the guts and I'm going to just ask him today. And jokingly, he put me on the spot and made me look like a fool in front of everybody. Like, you're not supposed to be asking me that. Who do you think you are? And, and then I was like, oh boy. And then he's like, I'm just kidding with you. But, great question. And he gave me a long answer, broke out that media session, and he wiped out, finished out. Well, for something I didn't want to talk about, I gave you a pretty good answer, didn't I? Slaps me on the butt and walks off.
You know what? Good for Mike for doing it and handling it that way, because a lot of guys would not. A lot of guys would, especially a young guy at the time would not make you feel as good as he eventually made you feel about it. So good for him.
Yeah, but stepping on needles and pins right at the beginning for sure. So
yeah.
Why did you decide to start covering the Rockies?
Well, I was doing their pre and post game show from 97, I believe it was from 97 through 01, and they decided to make a change at the time with who was doing, the television play-by-play, and they asked me to do it. And, for me, that was a no-brainer. I played baseball for a while in college, and I have a great love affair with the game and the opportunity to, do Major League Baseball. And at the time, as we chatted about, to also be doing the NBA, I think I was only at the time one of other, 2 people in the country doing 2 professional teams. So it was, I was very flattered naturally. And, it's not like I had to think about it. I was like, yep, let's do it. And I remember asking this question asking this question of the, general manager and executive producer, when they presented it, I said, well, what about the Nuggets? And they said, well, you do those, those guys as well. And so I was like, wow, that's, didn't require me to think very long and hard. And I had a very young family at the time. Two of my three boys were born at that point, but they were all of 4 and 2 when the 2002 season started. So it was a lot of, it was a crazy period of time, but that comes with the territory.
Talk about your work on the radio, working with Scott Hastings on 104.3 in Denver.
Yeah, Scott, I think I first worked with Scott. I would fill in occasionally when I was at KOA for way before you were born, the Sports Zoo, where it was Dave Logan and Scott Hastings, and I would be on there occasionally filling in. And so, Scott was my partner for a period of time, as was Dave on the Nuggets. And again, so I know those guys very well. And sports talk radio is a fun medium. It's a challenging medium because every day you have to have something hopefully provocative to say. You have to be entertaining for the time slot you're filling, even if there's nothing that has a great deal of interest going on a given day. It's February 25th in 2021, and a couple of days ago, obviously Tiger was a huge story, and not that is not a big story now, but the Broncos haven't played a game in, I don't know, almost 2 months, month and a half. The draft is a couple of months away. The Nuggets and the Avalanche are kind of in the middle of the season, and the Rockies just started spring training. So there's nothing that grabs you and says, man, I can't wait to talk about this at noon today or 9 a.m. or 4 in the afternoon. And that's the great challenge of doing talk radio. And specifically to Scott, we'd have a lot of fun and we'd get off on tangents. And I think probably the most memorable time for me in my tenure at the Fan in that particular time frame with Scott was when the rumors, what I'm about to say even was prior to the rumors getting going with Peyton Manning, but the Broncos, I should say, had a needed quarterback. And Peyton Manning, all of a sudden, this future Hall of Famer and one of the all-time greats, is out there, albeit nobody knew fully how his neck was going to, how he was going to return from that. And we kind of started in on the Broncos got to bring in Peyton Manning, and we had, we really kind of became cheerleaders for the Broncos to go out and find a way for John Elway to find a way to sign him. We all know what ultimately happened, which had zero to do with our campaigning, but it was a fun period of time.
Yeah. And just, going back, when I was able to intern back in 2000, amazing experience helping out with the Sports Zoo with Dave and Scott. And, you're talking about just content trying to fill if, during summer, Rockies are going on. But I remember they spent 2 hours talking about the movie Gladiator on one episode on one show. And just, even bringing in that pop culture and, outside of the sports realm. I mean, it was just, to this day, I still think that was one of the best programs on the radio when it came to sports. They
had great chemistry. They had a lot of fun together. And I agree with you. It really was a terrific program and was a must listen if you're into sports talk radio, especially. But you can't sit there and talk about the Broncos 365 days a year. I'll give you an example. I don't care how ardent a fan you are. I grew up in New York, and I still remain a diehard New York Giant football fan. I don't care what they're doing right now. I could care less about who they project as their, backup left guard or their fifth or sixth wide receiver, or who they may extend a free agent offer to. It's not stimulating to me. And therefore, to go and do that every day is a real challenge. And that's why you do have to talk about Gladiator for a couple of hours. It is also why, more recently, over the last year and a half to 2 years, I started a podcast like you guys are doing that I really enjoy. I mean, my podcast comes out once a week, every Thursday, morning. And to me, I can talk, if I have, things that, really interest me in a given week, maybe my podcast is 50 plus minutes, another week it may be 38 minutes. It all depends, but I'm not beholden to a time frame, and I'm certainly not beholden to one topic.
You're the guy behind my favorite home run call. Take a good look. You won't see it for long. When did you come up with that?
Thank you for saying that, and that's a great rendition of it. Probably should record your voice and stick it on there instead of me many nights. It happened organically. I've been asked that question many times through the years, and honestly, I do not recall how I came up with that. I do remember being, interviewed a fair amount when the announcement was made that I was going to be doing the Rockies on television prior to the 2002 season. And a question that came up, a fair number of times was, what's your home run call going to be? And I said, I've always believed that you have to be yourself, and I'm not going to write things down, and I'm not going to, say, okay, if this happens, I'm going to, say this, or if this particular scenario takes place, I'm going to say that. And I do believe that things should happen organically. And with that particular line, that is exactly when it ended up transpiring over a period of time.
Now let's talk about the Rockies. First, talk about the Arenado trade.
Who?
The Arenado trade.
I'm kidding you. Well, listen, Nolan is on a Hall of Fame trajectory. Nolan has had a marvelous 8 years so far in the big leagues, both offensively and without peer defensively, as we all know. And it was a sad day. It was a tough day. I think I tweeted out that day, the business of baseball, forgive this word, but sucks sometimes. And that, is basically how I would sum that up. Are the Rockies better without Nolan Arenado? No. There's no way you can give up a player of that stature and be better. It wasn't popular. I understand why it wasn't popular. I understand the vitriol that has been commonplace in the weeks since he was traded, whether it be on social media or in print or on talk shows or on podcasts like yours. Completely get it. People are upset. People are angry. When you trade away a great player that's still in his prime, and you at least on paper didn't get a bunch of quote unquote sexy names back. So I get it, but that's where the business of sport sometimes interferes and unpopular things take place.
So basically more of a salary dump, more or less, wasn't it? From the Rockies standpoint.
Well, again, I would say that, the Rockies initially went out and signed him to a $260+ million deal. So, their eyes were wide open. I think every team in baseball, even the teams that have the deepest pockets, like the Dodgers and the Yankees, were all tremendously affected by the pandemic and the fact that, we played 60 games in Major League Baseball last year and there was nobody in ballparks. So all owners were adversely affected and had to change probably considerably what they were doing in the near term from a business standpoint. So to sit here and say that didn't have an effect would be naive. And I don't speak for the organization, but I think, if they were saying, it would probably be disingenuous to say that it didn't have an effect. And I think in the letter that was made public from Dick Monfort to season ticket holders, he said as such. He said, we've been affected, as is everybody in baseball, and it's not just business potentially as usual. They've had to change course, and I'm sure some of that, or maybe much of it, had to do with the moving of Nolan at the time.
If at all, the only good trade for Nolan Arenado would be to the Cubs for Chris Bryant.
Well, here's the thing that takes place, because we all love sports and we all speculate about deals and can make our own deals, but it's not fantasy baseball or fantasy football or fantasy basketball. And because it sounds like, well, that would be a reasonable deal, great player for another guy that's been a great player, a former league MVP, even though Chris Bryant had a down year in 2020. That deal may not have been out there. It may have been out there in social media land, but social media land is not owners and general managers conversing. So you have to keep that in mind as well.
Spring training is getting going. What are your thoughts on this year's Colorado Rockies?
Well, I've spoken a lot about it. I was talking about it on my podcast, not only this week, but last week and ensuing weeks. We'll be talking quite a bit about it. I think the best way to sum it up, and it's a good question, is it's about opportunity. A lot of guys are going to have opportunities to see what they can do at the big league level. And we'll see who really grabs onto an opportunity and emerges as an impactful player. And some of those guys have had opportunities in the past, but now they're going to get, even more at bats, whether it's a Hilliard or a Hampson, or even a player that's been up for a fair amount of time now in Ryan McMahon. Can he take that next step? We've seen him be pretty good, 24 home runs a couple of years ago. Can he cut down on the strikeouts? Can he become a 30-plus homer guy? And if you think back to the recent history of the Rockies, they've made some big trades that weren't popular. Matt Holliday to Oakland, and one of the guys they got in return was Carlos Gonzalez. Well, Cargo became a great player in a Rockies uniform. When Tulowitzki was traded to Toronto, they brought up a young player that, unless you were a hardcore Rockies fan and had read a lot about him as he traveled through the minor leagues, Trevor Story wasn't, by any stretch a household name in these parts. And he hit 2 homers off Zach Greinke to kind of introduce himself to Rockies fans. And he has emerged as a great player. So who will that next guy be? Hopefully there'll be a couple of them that are now provided an opportunity. And so that's the word that I come to describe what 2021 is about. And the other thing to keep in mind is this sport will always be about pitching. Baseball will always be about pitching. And odd as it is to say, the strength of the Rockies is their starting rotation, which will give them a chance to compete. They have to be much better than they've been offensively the last couple of years. And I'm saying that those last couple of years when they were not good offensively included Nolan, and now Nolan's gone. So we'll see, again, what kind of strides they could make there. But they have a pretty solid rotation. Believe me, there's a number of teams in baseball that would swap their rotation for the Rockies' rotation.
3 good players that will probably help the Rockies this year: Garrett Hampson, Sam Hilliard, Josh Fuentes.
You want a little thumbnail sketch on each of those? Is that your question?
I'm asking if you agree.
That they could. I'm a big fan of all 3 of those guys. I'm a huge fan of Garrett Hampson because he can run. He's got sneaky pop. He can hit 12 to 15 home runs. I think if he's playing every day, he has great versatility. I would say he's probably the favorite right now to start in center field. That's my supposition. With Sam Hilliard, very intriguing guy, 6'5", close to 240 pounds, yet runs really well, could legitimately steal 20 bases, and he has light tower power. And with those 2 guys, this is a familiar thought with a lot of the Rockies, Ryan McMahon included. They have to cut down on the strikeouts. And if they can cut down on the strikeouts and get the ball in play more, they're going to be better, and collectively the Rockies will be better. Josh Fuentes is a guy that's probably not on paper as talented as Hilliard or Hampson, but he keeps showing up, and he made a nice name for himself last year with the glove at first base, and he swung the bat effectively, and he's a baseball player, kind of like his more famous cousin. He's just he's a guy that grinds, and I would never, ever count a guy like that out because he's got the chip on his shoulder, and he keeps getting better. So I'm a big fan of Josh Fuentes as well.
Wait, who's Josh Fuentes' cousin?
Nolan Arenado.
The guy we just let go, buddy.
Wait, that was his cousin?
Yeah, they're really like brothers. They're exceptionally close, but they're first cousins.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, you got stumped, buddy.
Fine, for like the first time in any interview, I've been stumped.
Well,
Won't be the last.
Good for you
Won't be
then.
the last.
That happens to me all the time.
Either way, Josh Fuentes will start the first game, either at third or first.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see. Ryan McMahon, is probably going to get he's going to be in the lineup, and my guess is he'll be at third, and at first base, the Rockies assigned a kid out of Grandview High School who had some really nice moments a few years ago before injuries derailed him, and Greg Bird at first, and C.J. Crone, who's power hitting guy who's been with a number of clubs, has produced over the years. So there's a lot of competition at first base.
Like you said, this could be the season of opportunity for a lot of these guys to, really stand out and shine. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we see the next superstar like we, occasionally do with this Rockies organization. So, Jack, a couple more questions, and then we'll wrap it up, buddy.
Okay, what do you do in your free time now?
What do I do in my free time? Well, in the winter, in the fall and the winter, I normally call college football. I didn't have there was some changes this year, and so I didn't do any college football this year. I did some college basketball, primarily out of the Pac-12, and I do my podcast, the Drew Goodman podcast, every week, and spend time with my boys. I have one that just finished college, and he's done playing. I have another one that I'm going to see tomorrow. He's playing in the Midwest, and I have I coach at Arapahoe High School on the side, and I have a senior baseball player there, and I like to run and work out and read and a lot of things other people do.
Final question. What
Yeah.
was the greatest moment of your career?
Oh, wow. Wow. The greatest single moment. That's a tough one. I mean, I have a lot of memorable moments. I know I've defaulted to one, Jack, that's not going to make you happy because it was before you were born, and your dad may remember this, but when Sonny Lubick was the head coach at Colorado State in football, they really got it rolling for about a better part of a decade, and they were nationally ranked often during that time period. And they went down to Arizona. The University of Arizona was Sports Illustrated's preseason #1 team in the nation, and at the time, I think they were AP #4 in the nation. And they went down there, and Colorado State, I think, was in the teens, 17th in the country, something like that. But, they're playing Arizona out of the Pac-12, and they, at the time, it was a Pac-10, and they were, decided underdog. And Colorado State went down there and beat them convincingly. I mean, it wasn't a blowout, but they beat them convincingly. And it was a huge win. And I just remember calling that game with Gil Bird, who used to be a cornerback with the San Diego Chargers. And that one, has always been at the top of the food chain. There were so many memorable Rockies games during the 2007 run when they won 21 out of 22. I remember being at Texas A&M a week and a half or so after 9/11. And the top deck at Kyle Field, almost 100,000 people, was red. Everybody wore a red T-shirt. They sold them. Everybody in the middle section was wearing white, and the lower bowl was wearing blue. And it was, man, I mean, the hair would stand up on your arms thinking about that as we got ready to call that game. I don't even remember who Texas A&M was playing that day in football, but I certainly remember that, and I've been very fortunate, very privileged to do what I've done, and to have a small part in having a really good seat for a lot of memorable games.
Well, Drew, we appreciate everything. It was tough for us baseball fans not being able to go to a game, but the next best thing is being able to watch it on TV and listen to you tell us a story along with Spilly and Huey and, Jenny and the rest of the crew. So hopefully we'll be able to, get into Coors Field a few times, but if not, we'll certainly be tuning in to you and the rest of the team at AT&T Sportsnet.
Well, I appreciate
Wait, hold
that.
on.
You bet, Jack. Got another question?
First, do you want me to give you my take on the lineup for the Rockies for this year?
Absolutely. Let me hear it.
At catcher, we have Elias Diaz. First base, CJ Crone.
Okay.
Second base, Garrett Hampson. Shortstop, Trevor Story. Third base, Ryan McMahon. Left field, Raymel Tapia. Center field, Sam Hilliard. Right field, Charlie Blackmon. Designated hitter, Josh Fuentes.
Okay. Well, I think that's a really good potential look at it. The only place, and you may be right, we'll see. First of all, as of right now, there's not going to be a DH in the National League this year. So unless the Players Association, the owners can agree prior to April 1st, which is a possibility still, we're not going to see a DH. I still think that it's going to be Brendan Rodgers at second. The Rockies are going to really want to give him a good, long look, because he's a guy that was one of the better prospects in baseball for several years. And, he's had just under 100 bats at the big league level, and he's dealt with some injuries, but you got to find out if he can be impactful at the big league level. And I like Garrett Hampson in center, but, to your point, Hilliard's got to play, a fair amount also. So that's going to be one of the interesting battles in spring training, what happens at second base and how the outfield shakes itself out. But otherwise, I think you're probably right on the money, man.
I appreciate your insight.
You bet. Well, Jack, I appreciate what you're doing. How old are you again?
11.
11. Good for you. You're doing a great job. And I think it's so cool that you guys have gotten together and you have your own podcast and you're cultivating a combination of interest in broadcasting and sports. And I wish you all the best down the road, and hopefully we'll do it again at some point.
Absolutely. You will always have a standing invite on this show. So we appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule. And like I mentioned earlier, look forward to seeing you call some ball games, and hopefully this will be a good year for the Colorado Rockies.
Hopefully they'll surprise a lot of people, and that would be wonderful. But you guys stay well, and if we don't see you at the ballpark, we appreciate you watching on AT&T.
Big Daddy's Auto, where we're big on customer service, big on savings, big on financing, and really big on finding the right vehicle for you. Because at Big Daddy's Auto, it's all about you and our big, easy, hassle-free deals. Find your ride at Big Daddy's Auto.
All right, we want to thank Drew Goodman for taking some time out to speak with us. He has seen a lot of Rockies games. He had a lot of good insight. It's kind of cool that he's worked his way up and then he's decided to just stick around. I mean, if you're going to do what he does for a living, I don't think Denver's a bad place to be.
Mm-hmm.
Right along the Front Range.
Uh-huh.
So I know I see him a little bit too periodically when he branches out. He'll do a Wyoming Cowboys game occasionally as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now, what do you want to talk about first, wrestling or quarter midgets?
Let's talk about the quarter midgets, then get to wrestling.
Okay, so quarter midgets first. So you and the executive producer get the idea to go to the state fair, and you show up there. Had you seen quarter midgets before?
No, I don't think so.
Had you done any research on them? Did you know what they were before you got there?
No, I thought they were horses.
Oh, okay. So it was completely different from what you were imagining when you got there. What's your initial impression when you got there and saw them? What was the first thing you thought about?
Go-karts.
Okay. Did you notice, was there anything that kind of stood out about them? Like, what I'm getting at is, were they faster than you thought they would be?
No, not really. I've seen a lot of go-karts go pretty fast.
Got you. So the speed wasn't anything that caught you off guard. What about how close they were driving together? Like, was there anything about how fast they were running and how tight they were that you thought was crazy?
That was really crazy. It was a little scary.
So who were the kids that you went and watched?
My friends Blake and Casey.
Okay, and
sister,
how do you know them?
My dad knows their mom.
Oh, okay, right on. Did you enjoy it? Like, do you enjoy watching racing?
Yes.
Okay, so you think that's something moving in the future we can go. Eventually we're gonna get to a NASCAR race. I'm gonna get you to hopefully to Kansas Speedway or Vegas, and we'll watch a race.
And
Okay.
I may want to pursue a quarter midget career in the future.
Gotcha. So that you're putting quarter midgets. We have to get Papa Rex to build you a little quarter midget car and get you a helmet and get you in there. I will say this, that the Paradox of Sports logo would look awesome on the side of a car and or on a racing helmet. Okay, cool. Or both. Yeah, full. If we can just get the full sponsorship, that's something we can look at doing.
I'd be sponsoring my own thing.
Yeah, you'd be like Gene Haas. You'd just put your own name on the car and then race it and tear it up yourself. Okay, let's talk about wrestling. Where are we at? Visiting with your old man last night. He said, and maybe it's me because I'm ignorant and it's the social media and stuff I follow. I really thought AEW was kind of starting to take the lead on some stuff, and your dad, he actually laughed at me. So, in the wrestling realms of what you're following, like what's the big thing that's going on right now?
Bobby Lashley is your new world champion.
Of what? World champion of which realm?
WWE.
So the WWE is the big guys.
Yeah. The Raw, like the #1 championship on Raw.
So what does that earn him then when he becomes the world champion? Is that heavyweight? Is there any divisions, or is he just the champion?
He's just the champion. There aren't any divisions.
So will anybody challenge him at WrestleMania? Like, will he have a?
Yeah, he'll have a championship match, but I don't know against who.
Gotcha. So that's something they'll announce now. Over, the summer, and then through the fall, and now through the winter, as we have followed, you kind of kept me. There's certain matches that happen, and then if they win that match, they're guaranteed something in WrestleMania. So what is there still left to decide to fill in the program or the bracket, if you were, for what we're going to see?
I'm going to search up WrestleMania card.
Okay. Well, since you're doing that and we're recording on, what day is today? Wednesday. Okay, then let's go. Let's see. The Avs are playing. Let me check my Avs score real fast. Let's see what's going on there. All right, we're up 1-0 at the end of the first. All right, cool.
All right. Okay, 2021 WWE WrestleMania 37 matches. Everything you need to know, blah, 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 all that stuff. So there's going to be Universal title. Roman Reigns will defend his title against Edge. And SmackDown's Women's Championship again. Sasha Banks defends against Bianca Belair. The predictions for matches. Bobby Lashley defends the WWE title against Drew McIntyre. Raw Women's title, Asuka, the champion, faces Charlotte Flair. In a regular match, the rapper Bad Bunny and Damian Priest face The Miz and John Morrison. The Fiend Bray Wyatt versus Randy Orton. Shane McMahon versus Braun Strowman. United States title, Riddle defends against Keith Lee.
So this is a lot of the same. This is a lot of the same people that we've seen. A lot of these people wrestled in WrestleMania last year.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then there was Bad Bunny, and he's going to be wrestling in a match. That's just a prediction.
When is WrestleMania this year?
It's like April, I think.
Okay, so we're getting there.
Finally got fans in the thing.
Okay. Is it still in California?
It's going to be in Florida.
It's going to be, that's what they probably keep it down there because they're.
Bucks Stadium.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, because they can have fans there, whereas California, they still got her locked down.
Yeah, Intercontinental Championship, Big E defends against Apollo Crews. SmackDown Tag Team Championship, Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode defend against the Street Profits. Battle Royal, and then Women's Battle Royal. And then should I talk about Fastlane as well, which is soon?
Absolutely.
It's the final stop to WrestleMania.
Yeah. Okay. So where's that at? Is that at the training center?
So this is, it's still going to be at the Thunderdome. So This has been confirmed. Universal Championship, Roman Reigns defends against Daniel Bryan, the Universal title. Women's Tag Team Championship, Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler defend against Bianca Belair and Sasha Banks. Predictions for matches, Edge versus Jey Uso. Drew McIntyre versus Sheamus in a last man standing match. United States Championship, Riddle defends against Mustafa Ali. Intercontinental Championship, Big E defends against Apollo Crews. That's what we have right now.
Not a bad card to have there, don't you think?
No, not that bad. I actually like.
Sweet.
All right, what's next?
We've talked about quarter midget racing. We talked about baseball. We talked about your wrestling. Great interview with Drew Goodman. We got another one canned next week where we're going to go back and talk a little Denver Bronco, Texas Tech Red Raider football. Man, I think we're good. I think we've about covered it. Don't you think?
Yeah, hold it. Let me look at trending on sports.
Okay. We want to thank Big Daddy's Auto for helping you guys out with the baseball. Threw a couple Big Daddy's commercials in there tonight.
Mm-hmm. Trending. Google Trends and search up. Google Trends. Google Trends and how about sports topics? Trying to find. How about I just search up sports news? I'm sorry this is taking so long, y'all. Sports news. Alright, let's look at this. All right. Nothing really that much. There's like what am I clicking on? Okay.
Something big just
This-
happened in AEW. Twitter just exploded.
Oh, probably Scorpio Sky AT&T Championship.
Okay.
That's just my guess.
Okay.
Scorpios? Yeah. Or that's just my guess.
Okay. Well, we can check it and we can see, and we can verify that next week. So I'd say we did a good job tonight. You happy?
Yeah, I'm happy.
What sports you got this weekend? Besides snow shoveling. You're going to get shoveled so much snow, dude.
I don't know.
Cool. Well, sticking with what executive producer likes us to do, why don't you go ahead and get us out of here?
That's it for this week's edition of Paradox of Sports Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram to help support the channel. Thank you guys very much. See you guys next week on the Paradox of Sports.